Hello, how are you today? So glad to see you. Have you written or are you writing a book that's so practical, so helpful, offering measurable results that you've wondered, could I turn this into an online course? My guest today, author, writer, Toni Campbell, plans to do just that with the book she's currently writing. Hi, I'm Patricia Durgan, the Christian Message Coach, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews to help Christian writers and speakers take their message online. This is Marketers on a Mission, episode number 110. My guest, writer, Toni Campbell. Hello, Toni. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm rocking and rolling down here in Atlanta. And you're in beautiful New Jersey, right?
Yes, I am. And it is.
And it
Beautiful.
is beautiful. How nice, how nice. You've worked in human resources for over 20 years. Then you went to radio. Then you went to teaching. Now you're a community outreach director. I'm beginning to suspect that you like people, Toni.
Yes, definitely a people person. And it's been amazing to see how God has used all of those different professions to culminate in what I'm doing now. I've learned skills along the way.
That's the way it is, isn't it? Every opportunity, every environment, every job or volunteer service prepares us for the ones down the road, don't they?
Yes, they do.
We could never do that, but he does it. He orchestrates all of it.
Yes.
You mentioned to me earlier that you had your own battle recently, just this year, with breast cancer. Can you give us just a little bit of an update on that, please?
Sure. And God has been very gracious. I was diagnosed in January, had surgery on April 2nd, and it was a bit of a long recovery. The surgery took about 10 hours. So it was because I had some reconstruction done at the same time. But it was a long time to recover, but I got back to work about mid-June, and I'm back in full swing now. I started part-time for a little bit. Don't have to have radiation or chemo, so that was a real blessing to me because things hadn't spread. So I'm doing well.
Absolutely. Praise God. Janice Heck and Catherine Ross, say hello. Hello. How are you?
Hello, Janice and Catherine. How you doing?
Excuse me. One of the things that you've mentioned to me is that even though you have a passion for this topic of community outreach, you've developed a program and you've been working in it for years. You're writing a book about it now, and you hope to do an online course that includes the contents of the book sometime in the future. And yet you told me earlier that you're not necessarily would be identified as somebody who has the education or the credentials to do such a task, do you?
That's true. I have no education in social work or any of the things that you might typically think would lead toward this type of a career, but this was God's plan. And so you got to go where he leads you, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. And you had really started this topic, this project came to your mind, as a memoir. 6 years ago, you started, actually before that, because you've been going to Christian Writers Conferences for 6 years, learning the craft. And along the way, as you were learning the craft, Christ was reshaping that into a program instead of a memoir. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Actually, the beginning of this book was a challenge by a friend of mine who heard about a writer's contest through Women of Faith. And she said, your life is so interesting, you should really write a book. And so it was just 10 or 15,000 words was the contest rule. And I went ahead and did that. There were about 800 submissions. They chose 30, so I was in good company with the rest of the authors at the bottom of that pile. But that was what got me started. And then as the years went by and I was writing it, I really seemed to see how ministry was taking the forefront in what I was writing about. And so it was just about 2.5, 3 years ago that I said, no, this is a book about ministry. And I switched the focus of that. But I actually had a cancer scare, 2 years ago, as well as what I'm dealing with this year. So things have been put on hold in between, which is why it's taken a bit of time.
Yes, yes. It happens to everybody. Cancer doesn't happen to everybody, but something happens to everybody.
Everybody. Exactly.
So, had you been doing community outreach on your own, developing it along the way without realizing it may become something more in the future?
No, actually, what happened was I attended a church plant. There was only about 35 or 40 people, but their mission was to make an impact in the community. And that whetted my appetite. I saw what that looked like. I saw how that felt and what it was doing for the people that we were impacting. And so when I went to a larger church and they gave me a book during a leadership conference called The Externally Focused Church, it clicked. The light bulb went on and I said, yeah, this is what it means for your heart to break for the things that break the heart of God. And in reading that, I went to my pastor and we started working on this new ministry. So that's how that got started.
And that was published way back in 2004, I should say. But it sounds like you got hooked up to it just pretty soon after that. And when you did start this process at your local church, give us an idea of how it started. How many services or what kind of services did you offer originally? And now what kind of services are you offering?
Okay. Well, what we decided to do was the first thing needed to be kind of a big win. It's something that everybody of any age or ability could participate in. And so the decision was made to have a food drive. And we went to the local food bank, found out the types of things that they needed, put together a display in what we called our fellowship mall to let people know about hunger facts in the community and that type of thing. And we collected over 700 pounds worth of food. Yeah, it was a big win. But I went to the pastor and said, the problem is we never left the building. This was great, but we never left the building. And that was really what I wanted to see. So, yeah. So
why do you think there was a disconnect? Can I interrupt you and ask you that? So it's an intriguing piece of information. Why do you think that was the case? What did they do with 700 pounds of food amongst themselves?
Oh, no, it went to the local food bank, but the point was the individual did not interact with anyone outside the building.
Thank you. That was a missing piece for me.
That's great. Okay. So the pastor pointed me in the direction of a couple other congregants that were like-minded, and we literally sat down and started making a list of all of the nonprofits in the area. And we did some Googling to find some others and called them and said, if you had a small group of volunteers, what would your wish list be? What could we do for you? And that's how it started. And so the first outside the building outreach was with Dress for Success. Do you know?
I love that ministry, but tell us about it, please.
Sure. It's nationally based, and it exists to help women who either have been out of the workplace for a long time or who have never been in the workplace dress appropriately for interviews. So if they don't have the funds that they need for the interview attire, what they call suit them. And it's everything from jewelry and a pocketbook and heels to the suit. And then if the woman is able to get the position, she can come back and get 7 days worth of clothing. So she has something to wear each day of the week. And they do empowerment seminars and stuff too.
Yeah. So. She can feed her family if that's
absolutely
in ways that she opens doors she would perhaps never have opened before.
Correct.
So how did your church's outreach connect with them?
Well, in a couple of ways. They had a boutique and it needed more racking systems. It needed a coat of paint. They wanted to create a resource center where the women could come in and send their resumes out. So somebody got some computers and had them wiped clean, and we created that area. So what we did was enable them to be able to function more efficiently to help their clients. But one of the people who worked with us was so impressed with their organization that she began volunteering there. And then the following year, we did something for Christmas, and their 3 full-time employees came and worked with our outreach there. So while we didn't all interact with every person utilizing that, we started to build a relationship with the people within the organization.
Okay, my mind is exploding, Toni.
Sorry.
This is so practical and so needed and so obvious, but I don't know anybody who's doing this.
Right, right. Yeah.
Did you always partner with other ministries, or did you also have your church's own outreach?
We did our own outreaches as well. Yes. When it got to the point where there were so many people on board with volunteering, and when I tell other churches that we had 1/3 of our congregation actively participating at any one time, which was about 200 people, it blows their mind, because that level of participation is unheard of. And so we actually had to begin to create things because organizations couldn't take on that many volunteers. So yes, we did create our own. We created something called a free market, not a flea, but a free market. And we did our Christmas store, are two of the larger things that we did. But the biggest thing, and I think the thing that flipped the switch for a lot of our volunteers, we called it Adopt a Room. There was a local homeless shelter which had 17 bedrooms. And one of our congregants was actually living there. And she had come to me and said, Miss Toni, it could really use a coat of paint. It was right after Dress for Success. And a friend of mine and I, actually two women, and I went and took a look and said, oh, this needs so much more, so much more than a coat of paint. And so yet another friend said, you want to go in and paint this, but why don't we do like a little extreme home makeover on every room? That show was very popular at the time. And each one was about the size of a dorm room. And so small groups each adopted a room. It cost about $300 to do everything we did to it. But when you had 10, 12 people in a small group, that was a very small amount of money for them to come up with. And we put down rugs. They had no closets. We put up racking systems so they could hang their clothes. We put up drapes where they had tacked sheets over the windows. And so it changed everything, but it gave people the opportunity to meet those living there. And it was no longer something they were putting their money, a cause they were throwing their money at. It became real. These were people with names, people with stories, and it really did turn the boat around.
And did you find that in the serving of others, your congregants, it flipped a switch for them as well, and it just fed that fire in them?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I meant when I said flip the switch, was no longer did I have to say, hey, I need volunteers for. They started coming to me. Are we going to go back and do this for them? Are we going, how are we going to, what's the next touch point? And yeah, it was amazing. And people actually started to come to the church because they saw what we were doing in the community.
Yes. Not talking about loving others, but loving others.
Exactly. Right.
I love hearing everything that you said, because I can just, in my imagination, I can blow that out, develop those concepts out in my local area, and just think of the many, the best, most effective Christian ministries. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to be, you tell me if they need to be Christian or if you're open to any, but for the Christian ministries that I know in my local area, they're pitifully underfunded.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
So for someone to volunteer and say, my presence, my time, and in some cases, my money, that bolsters everybody. Everybody wins in that equation, don't they?
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct.
I'm wondering how many people you share this with who want to jump over the table and say, can I come to your church? Or when is your book going to be ready so that I can do that in my area?
I do hear that a lot. My church needs this. I hear that all the time when I share this, these ideas and kind of that journey that I went through. And the fact that it's a practical guide, it's not just the ideas, it's the step-by-step instruction. If I could talk a little bit about that, is that all right?
Yes, I've got that in my notes, but let's go ahead and do it now.
Okay. The working title is Jesus Has Left the Building, the nitty-gritty of creative church outreach. And so at the end of each chapter, the nitty-gritty is, this is the timeline that you'll need to accomplish this task. This is how many volunteers. This is the approximate cost. These are the types of items you'll need. And then there is even, here are some alternate resources. If you can't fund this, here are some organizations that might have grants or that type of thing to help you accomplish that. And so when you have that much practicality, it really becomes a no-brainer. You know, it's written out for you. Just pick it up and run with it.
Yes, yes. I can just see how many people who I've got so many things to say.
Sure.
It's been my experience, both personally and with other people that I've known in my church congregations, that there are many people who are hungry to serve, but there's no outlet.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. The woman
who preach or teach or sing, you're pretty limited in the local church.
Right. I actually had somebody come up to me and say that I didn't know how to get this, to get involved. And thank you so much for giving me that vehicle. And actually, when I left that church to take a full-time staff position at another church, she became the director leading the ministry for about 2 years. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Because it's we can pretend to be interested on lots of different levels, but when it's talking about going and cleaning the toilets down at the ladies' shelter, that's a total different level of commitment, isn't it?
Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. Got to roll your sleeves up and get dirty.
Yes, yes. Let me check and see if we have any comments or questions on Facebook. Sure. Over here. Let's see. I do not currently see additional comments or questions, but let me refresh. Okay. We've got company coming. Company's coming. Okay. Love the title, Jesus Has Left the Building. How did you come up with that crazy good title?
I don't know. I guess it was Jesus because honestly, we had a t-shirt and we had borrowed this logo from Steve Sogren has something called Kindness Resources. And he basically had said at the time, as long as you don't use it to make money, you can use this logo. And it said, the church has left the building. And then underneath there was a little gone fishing sign that said gone outreaching.
Yes.
And when we had that put on t-shirts, people came up to us left and right. And we're like, where do I get one? And it was like, join our ministry and we'll give you one. Exactly.
There are a lot of titles for books or programs or products and so forth that seem obvious afterwards. Mm-hmm. But while you're searching for a title in your heart and your mind and praying about it, sometimes it takes a little while to get that perfect one. And this is absolutely perfect. The professionals that you've talked to at these Christian Writers Conferences, mm-hmm. the agents, and they're your one-on-one conversations with agents or editors or publishers. What are their responses to this?
I hear that a lot, that they love the title, especially the fact that it has the subtitle of the nitty-gritty of creative church outreach. So if there's any question about what that means, that explains it. And again, I hear that it's a practical guide. It's unique in the industry, that there isn't something else out there like it, and that it needs to be published. So Lord willing, as I said, this last writers conference, I think I made that connection, and I'm hoping that it comes to fruition.
So 2 publishers are looking at it now.
That is correct.
And we hope and pray that one of them will pick it up. And if not, there are others out in the sea, aren't there?
Yes, there are. There definitely are. And then there's always self-publishing if it becomes necessary, right? So
yes. So tell me just a little bit more about, maybe give me another story you mentioned the Dress for Success.
Right.
Give me another example of another ministry that you shored them up, served them in practical ways. And and a second question to that is, are those connections ongoing?
Well, I have left that church, so there are some things that they have continued, and as different people have picked up the mantle, they've looked at it a little bit differently. So not everyone is still ongoing. Unfortunately, that Dress for Success location lost their lease and had to move. And so that was a problem. But another organization that we partnered with was the Salvation Army. It was one of the very first outreaches we did. And they had something called a drop-in center. So people who were homeless could go in there during the day, get something cool to drink, get some air conditioning or get some heat, if it's in the middle of winter. They had game tables that you could play cards and that type of thing. But what the city, believe it or not, did not have was any place that served a meal on the weekend. And it's hard to believe in a city of Trenton that did not exist, at least not at the time. And so they were looking for churches that would come in on a Saturday or a Sunday and feed a meal to these folks. It was about 100 people that they served. And so we initially called it Soup and Socks. And we prepared, some hot soup and a little side dish and gave out socks because that is a number one request from the homeless. Mm-hmm. And when we decided to keep going with that because there was such a large response and we were going to do it throughout the year, in the middle of June, unless it's gazpacho, I don't think people really wanted soup. So we changed the name to Meals and More. And so we would give out hygiene kits or we would give out other important things that they needed. That's what the more was, along with the meal. And what made us unique among some of the churches, they really came to appreciate the fact that it was a homemade meal. We would get tinfoil pans, like say we were making baked ziti, and we would give our congregants the pan because we would know how much we could get as far as servings out of that. Yeah. So we could be real clear on how many of those we would need to feed how many people. We always had a salad or something green, on the side. We always made these home-baked chocolate chip cookies, which were a client favorite. And we learned the hard way about fruit. The first time we went, we offered apples and oranges. And when you're homeless, you don't have dental care. And so many people didn't have the ability to eat an apple. And so we switched to grapes or watermelon or, oranges, softer fruits. So there's always a couple of components to the meal.
It sounds to me like you were very responsive, that you asked, number one, you asked what a ministry would need rather than, what am I trying to say? Announcing, thank you, Lord, announcing what you were going to do for them. Mm-hmm. And then if that partnership continued, then you morphed your offering to fit either their season or their needs or their clientele.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but with the case of the Salvation Army, that was one of the lessons that I learned because I did kind of announce. I had called them, I had made an appointment, we got a date on the calendar, but I didn't ask necessary questions. And I had 40 people sign up. And so I was very excited to tell them, we have 40 people who responded to this. And she said, and our kitchen can, handle 12. And now I was like, yeah. So a little bit of naivete there. So necessity became the mother of invention. And I created a number of jobs to do back at the church. So we had people coming in, making the sandwiches and bagging the cookies and, these things that kids could do too, because that was the other thing. I had said, oh, yeah, sure, your kids can come help, and found out, excuse me, that if they were 16 and older, they could help with parental consent, and they had to be 18 or older to really be there. Mm-hmm. So I messed that up big time the first time, but we made it work. We
learn, don't we?
Yes, we do.
All right, let's get back over here. So this is these are some of the descriptions and some of the ways that you've helped people. And everybody, the ministry themselves, the recipients of the ministry, your congregation, everybody who wanted to participate or be served, they were able to reach the goal and feel the Holy Spirit's pleasure. that they were
Amen.
part of something, and that God that everybody talks about, that everybody says really loves them. Hey,
Mhm.
he might really do. He might really love me.
Yes. Yes.
Hallelujah. So
Amen.
now we've got a book. We're working on a book. It's in front of two publishers, and we're talking about looking forward, looking into the future, considering creating an online course. Tell me, do you have that fully fleshed out? Is it sort of a nucleus of an idea right now?
It is a nucleus of an idea, as I mentioned to you, because I do work full time, and I'm trying to do this, and you've spoken to others in recent past about how important marketing is and how that really does fall on the shoulders of the author. I've tried to figure out ways that I can get this message in front of as many people as in as short a time as possible, and really be succinct with it. So I've been looking at the possibility of seminars or breakout sessions at pastors' conferences so that I can speak to a cross-section of churches all at once and hopefully whet their appetite. And then the next logical step would be, since I might not be able to get to each of their churches in person, to speak to them more, or to help them as they're laying the groundwork for these outreaches, to have these online courses that could take each one of these, because the book is separated into 12 different types of outreaches, and I could make 12 different courses on, this is what you need to do. And that way they can spend time with it, they can ruminate on it, and probably have some sort of a feedback mechanism where they could write for more information and that type of thing.
So the marketer in me is wondering, going to the 12 different courses versus one overarching course that then perhaps has breakouts of the specifics of that outreach.
Right. That's actually what I was getting at. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay,
I didn't make that clear.
Okay. Because you're so smart. That just seemed like a natural way to do it. What's in the future? I mean, we're not even there yet because of the book. We're way on. But what do you think? Has the Holy Spirit given you insights? And I'm not asking you to reveal promises that are private between you and Him.
Right.
But you've talked to people who are in the profession. They are excited about it. They love the title. They love the concept. You're talking to publishers, the people on the street, and in the church that you belong to, churches now that you've served at and done this, activated this program. It sounds like there's momentum building, Toni. Do you sense that? Surely you do.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like doors are really starting to open. So
now, how many years have you actually put feet to the floor, in a total for these, going out and serve people like this? What day or what year did that start? Do you remember?
I absolutely did, because I journal. So I had that first conversation with my pastor in January of 2010. And we had that food drive in March of that year. So it's been a little over, or almost 8 full years. Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a long time for the best seeds to germinate, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It's the same thing with building relationships through these outreaches. It's not an immediate, for some people it is. It's an immediate connection, and they like what they see and they start asking questions. But with others, they just need that constant touch point. And so you keep going back and building relationships.
I love, not everyone, going back just a moment to the online course, not everyone's book would fit such a frame. So I think that it's really important for anybody who's listening, if you're considering creating an online course, there are multiple steps, all of which you can do with Christ's help. So, but just be aware it's a big project, but it's a beautiful thing because you have the potential. You've got those videos and those trainings and those PDFs uploaded rather, and you can make them available constantly 24/7 around the world. And there may be, or according to your business model, they may or may not include one-on-one workshops that are online, or individual coaching, or fill in the blank with other ways that people could connect with you personally. And yet, once you have an online course, whether it's for free or it's a paid course, then your message can get out all the time. Well, then you can still sleep. Praise God.
Praise God, indeed. That's something that I could use a little more of some days.
The same technology that can make us drive us mad is the same technology that whisks his message around the globe. It's a marvel, isn't it, to be living in this time in history?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now you have readers, viewers. I will, as I always do, I will post all of the links that Toni has mentioned above the video. It'll be a tab that says resources mentioned in this episode, and I'll do that after the episode is over. But we want to talk really quickly. You've got a brand new website that's going to be ready in 2 weeks.
Yes, it should be ready by the very beginning of September. I'm excited about that, yes.
And that will be tonicampbell.org.
Correct.
But we can keep up with you. Right now you're active on Facebook, so we can go to do you have an author page yet?
I have a blog page. I don't have an author page.
Okay. And I'm going to put that link on there, but for those who are listening right now, what is that? LakesideLessons.blogspot.com. And within Lakeside Lessons, there are a number of blogs that are kind of labeled Adventures in Community Outreach. And so while the blog is somewhat personal in nature and it's a lot of stories of things that have happened to me, there are specific blogs about the different community outreaches. I like that. And we can also hook up with you on Facebook and follow you there, because you're going to be putting up those progress reports, aren't you?
Oh, undoubtedly. Absolutely. And I hope they come soon.
Wow, it's been so great to talk to you and hear your story. I'm all energized.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I just am so passionate about this subject, and I get so excited talking about it, and I could go on forever. So I do appreciate that you've given me a whole half hour of time to be able to do that.
Before we go, let me see if we have any other comments or questions. Anne, Tuvalu?
Oh, Tuluva.
Thank you, Tuluva. She's watching and says, "Hey, Toni."
Hey, Anne. She's a big encourager of mine.
How nice. And many others will watch the replay. Toni and I will periodically check back if you have a comment or a question. If you want you want to cover a specific area, or just encourage Toni, you're welcome to do that. Put that in the comments below after we're finished with the episode, and we will check back and respond. And we would so appreciate that. Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Toni Campbell, for joining me today.
Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate it.
Viewers, thank you as well. I appreciate you. I just appreciate you. This has been Marketers on a Mission, episode number 110, baby. Writer Toni Campbell. We've got a great lineup next week. I'm going to deliver 2 tutorials, and then I'll host 3 authors, Dawn Kinzer, Kathy R. Green, and L.B. Johnson. So I know you're going to want to watch that, each of those. Our enemy whispers to us, doesn't he? The more we determine and commit to following Christ, the more he tries to throw obstacles in our way. And one of the ways that he does that is he tells us that we can't market our books online because we're not smart enough to figure out how to do it. Okay? That's a lie straight from the pit, my friends. This show is designed to help you learn online marketing so your message can spread around the world for Christ. Until next Monday, I'm Patricia Durgan and Toni Campbell. I'm here every weekday at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern, so mark your calendars and join us, please. Have a great weekend.